Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. Wind played a major role in the birth of tea. If you are addicted to and in love with your favorite Darjeeling tea, remember, you can blame it on the wind. It was a cold Chinese winter afternoon in the middle of December. The wind was unusually strong, and His Highness, the Emperor of China, Shen Nung, had closed his eyes for a quick siesta, returning after a long hunting trip to the mountains. With his regular cauldron of water gently boiling by the side, history shall never know from which direction that sole leaf flew. But flew it certainly did, and landed right in the boiling water pot. While His Highness Shen Nung slept, the water boiled and the leaf started exuding color, fragrance, and flavor into the water. The sound of the bubbles woke up the emperor, and he looked around and sniffed the air. It was filled with an aromatic fragrance never experienced before. He slowly looked into the pot and was amazed to see a golden-colored liquid bubbling. He poured himself the exquisitely fragrant water with a beautiful golden wine color into a cup, inhaled the aroma, and he was transformed immediately and transported to another world. He felt warm and invigorated, and the word cha came out of his mouth, and thus tea was born. And the rest is history. Emperor Shen Nung immediately realized that he had stumbled upon an earth-shaking discovery. He promptly started its plantation and protection in complete secrecy. Slowly, the beverage started reaching out to the world. It is said that tea was regularly served in the courts of Emperor Ashoka and King Harshvardhana. It was a moment of truth and the first step towards a journey that transformed history, habits, and lifestyles. This was the humble birth of the most legendary, popular, and second most loved and consumed beverage in the world after water, which every fourth person on the planet drinks and savors. When the Portuguese princess Catherine, a great connoisseur of tea, married King Charles II of England, she brought along with her dowry crates of tea, packed and marked as TEA, Transport de Ervas Aromaticas, meaning a cargo of aromatic herbs. The abbreviation stuck as the popular name tea. It was Portugal's trade with China that had introduced tea to Portugal, and Catherine in turn introduced it to the British in the form of her highly popular and well-attended afternoon tea parties. Soon, tea drinking became a ritual in Britain. At roughly around the same time, the East India Company received a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I on 31st December 1600 to trade with India. It wasn't long before the English got so fond of tea that it became an obsession, thanks to huge exports of tea by the East India Company. But everything was not hunky-dory. China wanted only silver as merchandise in exchange for tea, and sterling was getting dearer because of the American War of Independence. This led to illegal trading of opium with China against tea, where payment to the East India Company was made in gold. In turn, the company paid for tea imports from China in silver. But soon, the Chinese banned opium, and that led to the famous Opium Wars. Finally, the East India Company's monopoly of tea trade with China was ended by Lord William Bentinck through the Charter of 1833. 2 years after the charter, Archibald Campbell, a doctor, started a sanatorium in Darjeeling with an inhospitable tract of land purchased from the Chogyal of Sikkim on 1st February 1836. Darjeeling then had a population of only 100 tribal lepchas. It took Campbell less than a decade to transform it to a bustling hub of 10,000 lepchas, which was to become the backbone of the labor required in tea plantations. The situation was now getting ripe for plantations to start in India. Campbell had learnt a bit about tea plantation in Nepal from his mentor Brian Horton, and he now started experimenting in his backyard. He knew Darjeeling fulfilled two basic requisites essential for tea cultivation: low temperature and high altitude. Tea grew rapidly in favorable climate of Campbell's backyard, but something was missing. The tea did not have the flavor or the smoothness of the Chinese tea. It wasn't palpable and there was no aroma. It was not working out, and demand for tea was making the East India Company impatient. The East India Company was hell-bent upon breaking into the ferociously guarded Chinese tea cultivations and get their seeds and the secrets of the 2,000-year-old process that had made the Chinese king of the tea trade in the world. The opportunity presented itself in the form of Scottish botanist Robert Fortune, who literally changed the fortune of the East India Company. He became the mastermind of what became famous as the Great Tea Robbery. In 1848, after taking over the company, the newly christened British East India Company sent Robert Fortune on an undercover mission to steal the secrets of the tea cultivation and processing from China, disguised as a fair Mandarin Chinese man. Fortune traveled far and wide to the deep hinterland of China's tea gardens and manufacturing units, which was out of bounds to the public, particularly foreigners. He lived undercover for over 4 months, and then his patience paid off when one fine morning he became the first foreigner to set his eyes on the 2,000-year-old tea manufacturing secret. His heart was pounding when he first lay his eyes on the sprawling acres and acres of tea cultivation. Exposure would have led to instant death. As he gained courage, he extensively explored the tea gardens, collected samples, and made copious notes before returning to Shanghai in January 1849. It was sheer luck that he made 3 trips to China undetected in what can only be termed as an atrocious adventure with a high risk factor. In that short period, Fortune worked night and day with dogged determination and collected a whopping 13,000 plants and 10,000 seeds. He transported the fragile and vulnerable seeds and saplings in the special Wardian glass case, padded with burnt rice ash to absorb the moisture and prevent decay. With this, he made the long, dangerous and arduous journey from China to the upper reaches of Himalayas, via Hong Kong, and finally Calcutta. Fortune not only brought with him tea seeds, tea leaf samples, and the knowledge of manufacturing black and green tea, but also 8 Chinese tea specialists. This brazen theft by Mr. Fortune brought the tea supremacy of the Chinese crashing down and broke the centuries-old Chinese tea monopoly forever. Within a span of 140 years, from one tea garden the numbers grew, and there are now roughly over 10,000 tea gardens. The time was just right for the first organized large-scale tea garden in the Terai region to come up. It was around the same time that Chumta, where the Mayfair Tea Resort stands, started gaining recognition and eminence as the leading tea garden in the Terai region. But then that is another story for another day. Till then, keep sipping your favorite beverage, that irresistible cup of tea.